Okay, so we have some OTMers and we have some current commercialization analysts with us. So I think it'd probably be helpful if our OTM team can introduce themselves to start off with, and then we'll have Alexis jump in. She's going to actually give our presentation today. So I'm Heather Jones. I'm the Intern Program Manager and our Federal Compliance Officer.
I'm Brad Edwards. I'm a tech manager.
Kyle Shelton. I'm also a tech manager.
Michelle Chitomber, tech manager.
Shreya Ghosh, tech manager.
I'm Shashank. I'm a commercialization analyst.
I'm Sammy. I'm a commercialization analyst.
Great. I think that's everyone else. So I'm Alexis. I'm also a commercialization analyst and also a chemistry PhD student here at the University of Illinois. Now, can everyone see and hear me and see my slideshow that I'm sharing? Great, thanks everyone. I was having some trouble with my camera earlier. So it's nice to see there's so many people here on the call and that are interested in working at OTM. So I'll just get started with the presentation and feel free to butt in at any time if you have any questions. So OTM, or the Office of Tech Management, does what we call tech transfer here at the University of Illinois. If you haven't heard of that, it's the process of making university innovations available for public use by protecting and licensing university intellectual property, making them possible to commercialize. So what does OTM do? Here's a little diagram of the tech transfer process. So the first thing that happens that prompts this process is the submission of an invention report to OTM by a university inventor. So this can be anyone at the university. Your typical example would be a professor and some of their students from their research group submitting an invention that came about as a result of research in their lab. But it could also be undergraduates submitting their capstone project, or really anyone who works at the university or used university resources to develop an innovation. And then the first thing OTM does is perform a screening assessment. And that's my job as a commercialization analyst and potentially your job too. We perform an assessment of the patentability and a market analysis for the technology. And then generally discuss what you find with the tech manager who is also assigned to that technology and help make a decision as to whether the university should protect that IP and where they should go with it. To do this, you participate in inventor interviews, which can be interesting if they're really excited to share their innovation with you. You'll also get training and on-the-job experience in IP law, market and industry analysis, and licensing strategies. So after this screening, if we protect the IP, OTM then looks to marketing and licensing the technology, either to a startup, a lot of times back to the inventor, do the inventor startup, or to an established company. Yeah. Great. So here are some examples of the things that have gone through OTM that were once inventions at the University of Illinois and are now products available to the University of Illinois licensees. I think these products and being involved in making them available is a big part of the reason why a lot of people like to go from research to tech transfer or IP. But if anyone wants to jump in here to talk about any of these, now is the time.
Yeah, I'll just touch on two of them anyway. The super sweet corn. So the modern sweet corn was developed here at the University of Illinois, and then the nice frothy glass of beer. That's one of two different beer types with rigs. So the American lager is used or is made with university developed low oil corn, and the Hefeweizen is made with university developed wheat.
Yeah. So yeah, there's a lot of products that developed through OTM. So what are the desired skills that we're looking for in commercialization analysts? Verbal and written communication skills are really important because you present your findings in a PowerPoint to the OTM team. So you need to be able to do that clearly and concisely. And also communication with inventors and tech managers at the inventor interview and through email and just talking. You need to talk to a variety of people about the inventions you're working on. And you also need to keep Heather and the lead and intern updated as well. Of course, you need an interest in tech transfer. And this is a big one, the ability to multitask and manage your time. So you'll basically always have multiple inventions that you're working on simultaneously. And you need to be able to manage those and keep track of progress for each of them, and also balance it with your coursework and research responsibilities. So then also a scientific or technical background is preferred because that lines up with the types of inventions that we typically get. But don't get this confused. You will work on inventions outside of your field of study. So the ability and interest in learning about things like AI or pharmaceuticals or crops is also important. Prior experience in business or commercial environments is also preferred, but not required. Okay. So what are the specifications of this internship? There's 9 positions available for law, master's, and PhD students at $25 an hour. The time commitment, there's a 2-week training period that starts May 12th, where all the interns work full-time or 35 hours a week for those 2 weeks, which is actually to your benefit because you'll get some training on how to do the job before you have to just start doing it. And then for the rest of the summer, law and master students can work full-time as well, but PhD students can work 10 hours a week because we typically are still doing research over the summer. And then for the rest of the year until May 2026, it'll be 10 hours a week in the fall and spring semesters, with time off for winter break and breaks and finals weeks. Okay. At this point, are there any questions about anything we've talked about so far? Okay, great. So why do you want to do this internship? It's a fun and a very friendly atmosphere. And now some of the TMs are on this call, but even if they weren't, I'd say they're all very friendly and very willing to answer any questions about careers or give a career advice if you ask for it. You get on-the-job training in a variety of desirable skills. You get introduced to IP, marketing, and licensing, which is sought after even if you don't go into IP or tech transfer later on. You do get a lot of practice with soft skills, communication, presentations, how to write a good email, and other types of communication. The internship is well known in the tech transfer community, which is a rather interrelated community. So you'll get access to OTM alumni network, a lot of whom still work in tech transfer in different places. And you get networking opportunities with the past alums, law firms that work with OTM, VCs, entrepreneurs, and industry professionals. Okay, so here are some of the alums that have done this internship before. There's some people who went on to be professors, some people in the top right who went on to be patent examiners, which means they work with the USPTO with the US government. People who stayed in tech transfer, and I see some of our current tech managers are there in those pictures, or people who went in to be a patent agent or IP attorney at a law firm, or went on to be an entrepreneur. And here are those statistics for our technically minded applicants. Yeah, as you can see, a lot of people stay in tech transfer, IP, or entrepreneurship. Great. So this is the recruitment timeline for the internship. Back to some more practical details. The resume or cover letter is due March 12th via Handshake, Simplicity, or by emailing it to Heather at that email there. There will be a week of case interviews the week of March 24th. And essentially the way the case interview works is it's a 1-hour interview that's broken up into 2 blocks. You're given a technology case to look at and are also provided a list of questions to help guide you to analyze aspects of patentability and commercialization that you would have to do as an intern. So you have 30 minutes to prepare with these questions and with the case. And then you have another 30 minutes where you go and sit in front of a panel that consists of some tech managers, an intern, and Heather, and answer questions about the technology and about yourself for the next 30 minutes of the interview. And then, so offers will be made April 2nd, and the deadline to accept a week or 9 days later, April 11th. And if you are a PhD candidate, you will need approval, usually just in the form of an email from your advisor saying, yes, my student can do this and I know about it. As a PhD student, I do recommend doing this before you apply, so you don't have to go through the whole case interview first. Okay. I think that's it for the presentation. If anyone has any more questions, or if any of the other interns want to talk about your experience with the program, please share them.
I will say that if you want to go back one slide, the Handshake and Simplicity job numbers are on OTM's website. So if you want to look those up specifically in our About section under Commercialization Analyst Program, that's where you'll find that information. And I pushed back the interview time because our spring break this year kind of fell where I would usually do interviews. So I will say that during spring break, be on the lookout for that email from me inviting you and scheduling you for your interview. Was there a couple interns that want to talk about maybe just kind of what to expect and maybe some things you've learned so far or time management stuff, anything like that?
I can answer that. So it's actually like really hard at first because you're getting, really introduced to all the language of patents and it's kind of like its own kind of vocabulary. But I would say the learning curve is super, like it feels more daunting than it actually is. Like the TMs are all very there to help you and help you learn. And then once you kind of, it clicks, it goes really smoothly. So don't be afraid when you see like all the patent world and all that stuff, because you do kind of get taught really well how to go forward. And then the training, of course, you kind of get an overview of all of it before you actually like dive into the text and stuff. And then your first one, you usually get like one or two and you walk through them with the TM through every slide and all that stuff. So it sounds scary to jump into it, but you really do get great training going forward. So then it just becomes a like time management between your research if you're in PhD or law school if you're a law student, and like balancing all of that. But you kind of like figure out a rhythm fairly quickly. And it's nice to be able to jump in and like learn about new techniques and new patents and all this stuff going forward. I mean, as a scientist, I think that's cool.
Yeah, I agree. It can be an adjustment, especially the first few weeks. But I think eventually you sort of learn, all right, well, this experiment gives me an hour and a half while I'm waiting for this thing to purge or whatever it is. So this is like a nice chunk of time I can use to work on my internship. And it does, you sort of get used to it after a while, but you do have to consciously make the time as well.
I had a question just about the time management. Is it flexible in terms of we would come into the office or we would just be doing work at our computers for 10 hours a week?
So
And how do most people kind of handle it?
So I'll tell you the expectation, the interns can answer how they handle it personally, but the expectation is 10 hours per week and then 5 in the office, 5 on your own. If that makes it easier, you're welcome to be in the office for all 10 though, if you'd like.
Yeah, I'll say we have our weekly meeting is Thursday mornings at 8:30. So at least for what I usually do is I'll stay for a few hours after that meeting and get, several of my in-person hours done then. And then for most of the rest of the hours, I'll do them sort of between experiments in the lab.
Thank you.
And I will say for our law students, there's been some questions. I know sometimes they take legal internships over the summer and we understand that and are flexible, and we do have a late start date for law students. You just have to reach out and let us know that ahead of time.
Hi there, I'm a law student, so I just wanted to pop in and ask, do you want to know that before we interview or after we interview?
During is fine. I certainly don't have to know before because I know that you're all probably still kind of working those things out. Our timeline this year, I think, kind of helps with that. You should know by the time you come to interview. If you don't, though, just let me know as soon as you do find out.
Sounds good, thank you.
Hi, I'm maybe interested to hear more from one of the current interns on what it's actually like when you're working, and maybe like a skill that you've picked up, something you've learned that you didn't expect you'd learn.
I could answer that one. I think something new coming into the program, as opposed to just reading papers in science, is learning very quickly how to pick out what is important to this job. It's nice to know the science. It's nice to look at the invention for what it is, but it's also important in our position to understand what its impact is in, the more commercialization context. And I would say for me, it took a couple of them to realize that, it's very easy to get bogged down in the science, trying to understand what this new technology is doing. And while that's important, it's also good to remember the reason you're going through this disclosure. And I think a lot of that also came as you do more of these disclosures in the same field. You start to get an idea of what other people are doing, what niches are available to be filled by new inventions, and so on.
I think this internship, or one area of knowledge this internship really has helped develop for me, is like exactly how university research works. Like, what is the purpose of it? And through our work, we also get lots of interactions with research grants, and we get to see how they're written and how they're framed, and really thinking about like how university research can like help the world at large instead of just being academic exercises. Because in our office, we really focus on the utility of inventions and how they can be used outside of academia.
You also get to kind of see more of the commercialization side. Like most often, if you're in a lab, you're developing a new research technique, but you're not necessarily thinking about how you can take that to market. So that's another aspect to our work, is that if once you see if something is kind of patentable, can you then market it? Would people be interested in doing licenses and stuff like that? So that's also a new aspect.
I want to jump in here. How do you go about understanding if this is going to be kind of a profitable thing, or if this is something that the university should undertake? And I understand that's more nuts and bolts, obviously later down the line. But is this just, Googling for what other products have already been established, or kind of what the customer base is going to be? And does the professor do that and you work with them?
That's a
It goes
great
a little
question.
hand in.
And oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, it goes a little hand in hand. Sometimes the professors will come to you with a general understanding of how their product can be commercialized. Other times they come to you with just a cool invention, and it's up to you to determine whether it can be commercialized. So I think it goes back and forth. I think Heather was going to say something.
That's a great answer, but I was also going to say we do talk about that during training as well. Like we show you how to do that.
Thank you.
The other thing I'll maybe add to that, just related to what Sammy said, I think we have great interns and they're also very humble. I think the thing I would add is we do as tech managers, rely on interns for some of this information and for helping us make those decisions, right? So I think that's one of the great parts of the internship, is like, especially me as a new tech manager, I just sent an email to Brittany today, and I was like, hey, here are my thoughts on this thing, but I'm really open to, all the research that you did and your thoughts on whether we should move forward on this, right? So I would just encourage you, whether you do this internship or any other one, like, get over that imposter syndrome as soon as possible, because it's if you have it, right? Because I've never had an experience with any one of our interns where I don't think that information is super valuable, and you don't have to be an expert in that area. You're an expert in your own area, but you've learned how to think regardless of whether you're a law student, PhD student, etc. So that's what we're looking for.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, I think that's a big difference in our internship when you just think of the word intern. Like you are a very important part of the process in our office.
And that's why I got to stop calling it an internship. It's a commercialization analyst.
Commercialization analyst, yeah.
Years, yeah.
Does anybody have any other questions? Okay, well, thanks for joining. Thank you, Alexis, for presenting, and our other OTMers that joined and answered some questions. And we'll see you on the other side. Have a good one.